Eden Koz here with Just Be, and we are about to take a spiritual boom. We are at an unprecedented time in human history where we are transitioning from 3D to 5D within the great spiritual awakening. This video and audio podcast is the place for you to find your truth beyond politics, your sovereignty, your voice. Let's kick up your vibration now. By the way, each episode ends with the Just Be practice to do just that. P.S. Just to know a little bit more about me, I'm a psychological empath, meditation master, dimensional healer, all the things to help you within this ascension. To learn more about me, visit me at edenjustbe.com. And let's get this party started. Right. Okay, recording in progress. All right, little smile. Yay! Okay. I think that's good. And then get ready for a moment. Eden, Just Be, Spiritual Boom. Welcome, Sacha Stone. And if you're listening or watching, if you can just give a round of applause. And if Sacha, if you can say hello to everybody.
Very good to meet you in the first instance, Eden. And hello to your audience.
Thank you very much. Okay, this poetic, articulate man, it has been putting his life and his heart into the Great Awakening. And I'm thinking that many of you guys know him, but many of you guys might not know him as well. So we're going to get personal in the beginning. Then potentially in this time, I would like to move more into 5G, transhumanism, and AI. And then as ascension is now so important, I would also like to go into returning to the primary creator, written gospel versus the living gospel, the savior myth, personal growth, and then anything else Sacha would like to touch on. Thumbs up? Sound good?
I'm good.
Okay, awesome. All right, so now I'm going to go into the official bio. Okay. Rhodesia-Zimbabwe born. War experienced former rock musician, artist Sacha Stone is an outspoken advocate of human rights and natural justice. Over the past decades, hear that plural, he has dedicated his life to setting up various initiatives like the International Tribunal for Natural Justice with ongoing investigations into human trafficking, the Lazarus Initiative, reintroducing suppressed cultural, technological, and historical insights through monthly symposiums, and his latest wildly successful bi-weekly news broadcast, Arise Guerrilla News. He has just broadcast his widely shared first 5G Apocalypse Summit, focusing on 5G technology and the remedies to protect ourselves from harmful 5G radiation, which we'll talk some about today. He has instigated peace initiatives and educational programs, lobbied against human rights abuses around the globe, and prosecutes for the protection of Vanguard innovators, scientists, and doctors. He is currently developing the New Earth Sanctuary alongside Lake Bacalar in Mexico, as well as working with high-ranking military people and inventors in Romania to push zero-point technology as the source code for the New Earth Blueprint. Amazing. All right, tell me, I was looking more into Rhodesia and Zimbabwe and in Africa and just being born into that, which is an incredible, I would say, torrid history. Let me just remark from the Zimbabwe War of Liberation from 1964 to 79, Prime Minister Mugabe, 37-year rule, racial disharmony. How long were you there? What was it like? Let's get personal for a second.
Well, in the first instance, hindsight is 2020, but yes. History certainly is the thing that needs to be most corrected in all nation states of the world. And I now know that it wasn't a war for liberation at all for Zimbabwe. Yeah. It was a war of indentureship to take a country which was actually finding its feet in a perfect balance between whites and blacks. Actually, in Rhodesia, was finding its feet beautifully, not in the same way that South Africa was stricken by apartheid, but a proxy war was played out in my country, in Rhodesia, where I was born. That country no longer exists. It became Zimbabwe, and Robert Mugabe was installed. He was a proxy of the British Crown, if ever there was one. He tanked the entire country and the economy and ended up creating the poorest nation on the face of the earth from having been, I think, the wealthiest per capita nation on the face of the earth, certainly in terms of the resources in that country and how they applied to the slim population. So actually, it was just a proxy war in much the same way that Sudan is now a proxy war between Russia and America as well, the same interest of East and West. I was just in Sudan a few weeks ago, just before the war broke out. Lucky to have got onto an airplane and exited the country, actually. but the point being, I'm seeing exactly the same play now in Sudan, which has happened actually in probably 70 or 80 countries in Africa in any event in the course of my lifetime. So it's all part of the same old dialectic of imperial Western interests sacking the resources of the so-called developing world in order to replete their own dirty coffers, as if they didn't have all the gold and all the land anyway.
Mm-hmm. So how long did you live there? Did you grow up there?
17 years. So I'm born and bred African, white African. Okay. Then I've lived subsequent to that in England, United Kingdom for many years. Now I live between Southeast Asia and Central America. So I've got a base in Baca La Laguna in Mexico, where I'm building the New Earth Sanctuary, the big project that I've been kind of distilling for the last 20 years. And I've got my main home in Bali in Indonesia, where I built the New Earth Haven. And I've lived there for 18, almost 19 years. So I did, in the meantime, live years ago, over 20 years ago, I lived, about 20 years ago, I lived in Egypt and Morocco for 3 years between those two countries. So I'm fairly cosmopolitan, safe to say, but my heart is born and bred African.
So when did you start seeing, in terms of the Great Awakening, when did that start becoming clear in your vision? Have you always known that there was something that needed to be, let's call, fixed, even though it isn't fixed? Yeah, tell me a little bit more about the history there.
Of course, I thought that if you're 5 years old and you're in a high security boarding school in the middle of a war zone with helicopters carrying dead bodies in nets overhead every 3 hours, and you're clutching onto security fences which have got floodlights, and you've got, paratroopers walking around with machine guns 24 hours a day, and you're sleeping behind grenade screens with loaded guns in the dormitory, and wondering if you'll ever see your mother again from 1 year to the next, literally for 1 year at a time, not seeing your mother. Yeah, at that age, that's going to fuck you up something terribly, and it certainly did to me. And you look out into the African sky through those security fences, just seeing and hearing the taste and the sounds and the energetics of blood, of war. And how is a child going to be impressed by that? Everything is wrong with the world from that vantage point. Everything. There's no part of the world is righteous from that perspective. And the blessing that comes of that, of course, is that you end up carrying those trauma patterns with you in life, as we do, all of us. I would rather have grown up in a war in Africa than in a ghetto in Chicago, put it that way, because the one in Chicago is almost irredeemable. You can almost never recover from that degree of pathology, that kind of environment in some of the places in the so-called developed world, where there is no soul, no capacity to grow soul or to emerge as a living son or daughter of God. You are so butchered and mutated by the environment, by the synthetic poisons in the food, the air, the water. At least I grew up eating, at least non-weaponized foods and what have you, albeit I sustained asbestos poisoning, living in the kind of military dormitories, and that's affected my lungs. So now in my middle age, I suffer from that respiratory affliction connected to asbestos poisoning, which is not fun, and it tends to get worse, albeit I'm now in the biotech business, and we've got the cures for these, thank God. And
specifically help, please. All right.
Well, yes, it's one of the cures that we've got actually fast tracking out in the next 12 to 18 months. So I'm very excited about it. Yeah.
Very good. So how in growing up, again, it's not funny, but me growing up, I grew up in Statesboro, Georgia, like this southern, college town, such a difference. How, from where you were born to where you are now, How did you manage that? How did you make that happen?
I never once had a diary. I never planned anything. I never set an alarm clock. I don't look at clocks. I don't plan anything. I think I'm a good strategist where it counts. I'm a fool and a terrible character judge because I trust everyone wholeheartedly, and I welcome everyone into my life with a complete open heart. And I hope I continue, and I hope that I do that to the day I shuffle off this world. But I'm a terrible judge of character because I just insist on loving and trusting every single human being wholeheartedly. But I've never planned anything, and I am the busiest man I know right now. And I mean, in respect of the fact that I do a great many different things, most of them not very well, but with the best of intentions, certainly, and leaning into everything as best I can. But I'm driven, I'm smitten, I'm stricken with a bug for remedy, mind, body, and soul. And how do I, as the living man, reset this matrix? How do I take full responsibility and accountability for all the wickedness and the devilishness and the evil and the contrast in this world? How do I alchemize that through my heart, through my actions, into this world in my lifetime? That's the only thing that concerns me. And of course, one then has to have inordinate amounts of stamina. You have to have tremendous capacitance for creative expansion, and to always be leaning into life, always be on the front foot, and never allow yourself to be put on the back foot, unless you're humbling yourself in an audit, which I do on a daily basis. I audit myself as I'm awakening from sleep every single morning. There's a period of maybe 40 seconds or 2 minutes. I don't know how long it is, but I do know that I conduct an incredibly strict audit on myself at the soul level, and I drag myself over hot coals, psycho-emotionally and psycho-spiritually, every single morning, and hold myself to account for the previous day energetically. If there was an excess in any form of energetic in me, if I was unkind or unscrupulous or unmeasured in something, I will see it and feel it as I'm cogitating and awakening into the new dawn. I've trained the cells of my body to do that audit. It's where the pure truth, right action, quanta issues from me, and it's why I preach that simple that simple doctrine, which, pure truth and right action in the living moment is the path of least resistance to the highest outcome, always in always. And that's one living breath. And that's the entire gospel of the Master Jesus. That's the entire gospel of Lord Gautama Buddha. That's the entire gospel of the pantheon of the goodly gods of the ancient worlds. So yeah, life is simple and beautiful and powerful and majestic once we have removed our indentureship to the chaos being orchestrated by the kingdom of the devil.
Yes. And
once we have disidentified from the false light, so to speak, which is that great realm of Maya, of illusion, that the ancients and the Vedas also speak to. Again, simply enough done if one subscribes to or ascribes to pure truth and right action in the living moment. And that is also the technology, the means by which we actualize and move into coherence with the divine flame, which is not woolly hippie new age talk. That is the talk of the masters of the ancients, and it's where our supernature emerges, and we are thereby able to determine and affect and manifest outcomes in this world, which is to say, anchor patterns of perfection into this mortal realm.
You know what I love about all of this is that I am no longer I'm no longer just this woohoo person. Like, there's so much truth into all of this now, and you're speaking it as well. Do you mind if we transition into 5G, knowing that you just had a summit on that? So if you can initially get down just to basics in terms, you see 5G everywhere. What exactly would you say it is, or is
Well,
it?
please excuse me, there's some dogs barking in the background.
Yes.
I made the film 5G Apocalypse, the extinction event, in 2017 into 2018, precisely in order to warn the world about the impending cloak of doom that 5G and weaponized biosphere and weaponized so-called electromagnetic frequencies, weaponized frequencies meant. And I think that the film did a great deal toward that end in educating millions of people around the world. Certainly the film's been constantly banned and taken down, but I know that countless millions of people have seen it around the world, and it's helped a great many people. I was a victim of direct energy targeting, DNA signature targeted bioweaponry in 2016, which is well known to my audience. I only in the last year published photographs of myself when I was nuclear poisoned for 2.5 months and how it looked. And I tried to describe what happened, how it happened, and so on. It's pretty serious stuff. And the way it happened and the way it emerged in my life was a full spectrum immersion into understanding how diabolical the Vatican complex is and was, and how it had spent the last 500 years concocting the status quo, emerging into this horizon of, let's say, a mass sacrifice of innocence, a harvest of humanity, which is really what we're talking about. So I took what happened to me as the exercise and decided to speak to it. I was fortunate enough, I have always been fortunate enough, that I've had the resources and the ability to sit down with military, with intelligence, with political leadership, and to access pretty much anyone on the planet that I've wanted to sit down in front of and talk to. So I've conducted I don't do research. I've never researched a day in my life, but I have conversations. I have thousands and thousands and thousands of conversations, and I travel millions of miles. So I'm constantly on the move. I think I've been to over 20 countries this year alone, and we're not even in midsummer yet. So I'm constantly moving, flying and moving, and meeting with people and having conversations, even if it's just a 24-hour, 48-hour stopover. And the conversations are generally with people who are relevant people with very relevant voices. So I regard myself as in that sense, the very thing that my mother warned me not to become, a jack of all trades and a master of none. But I'm trying to master being a jack of all trades and a master of none, put it that way.
Okay.
The net is that I have had this quantum, universal, planetary conversation for 24 years now, since 1999, actually since 97, but 99 was when I formalized Humanitat Foundation. And being constantly on the front foot for almost quarter of a century, and still keeping my innocence more or less intact, and my open-heartedness, which is why I don't cover my chest, not because I think I've got a great chest, I certainly don't, but I've never covered my chest, and I can't bear covering it. It just feels like I just have to beam energetically from this center. If I have to wear a suit and tie in a given political arena, it's stifling for me. I'll have an asthma attack, and backstage
I've never seen you in a suit and tie. Have you actually done that before?
Well, of course. I mean, I've had to address parliaments. I've had to convene judicial commissions of inquiry. Yes, I've had to wear suits and ties, which is the hangman's noose and the cufflinks. I mean, this is all Babylonian mysterium cult, totemism and symbology connected to the enslavement of humans. So we're all these, blessed idiots clamoring off to the office, wearing their their Gianfranco sort of beautiful suits and ties and waistcoats and polished shoes. They're just prisoners. I mean, wearing the totems of prisoners, and that speaks volumes to me. So no, I'm trying now to completely divest myself of any symbols connected to enslavement, but it's very difficult. I mean, I was just in Bucharest about a fortnight ago and having to meet with ambassadors and senators, emphasis the Chinese ambassador and the Russian ambassador, in order to have conversations with them about this globalist Fabian agenda, which is taking place in this crypto war in the Ukraine, which is the biggest theatrical production we've seen in recent years. These conversations have to be had. Someone has to have them. BBC and CNN are not going to be reporting anytime soon on the thing called the truth. So I feel obligated to do that. But I then broadcast every 2 weeks with the Arise Guerrilla News Network, which I set up a couple of years ago on the back of the tour that I did in the United States, the Arise Resurrection Tour. And my bi-monthly, fortnightly, 2 or 3 hour Arise show really tries to distill and focus and compress the best voices in the world on a given subject, speaking to the status quo. So I'm very blessed that we pull in some of the greatest icons in the world onto that show every 2 weeks and get a real kind of distilled focus on pure truth in the mainstream narrative. That's my keeping in with the frontline activism. Lazarus Symposium that I do once a month that you kindly alluded to in your introduction is my attempt to consolidate and aggregate the greatest metaphysical voices and hearts, scientists and doctors and archaeocosmologists and physicists and engineers and rocket scientists, and just the best of the kind of not just academic set, but people who are really at the vanguard of consciousness, and then to bring those minds and hearts together in the symposium every month. That we've done 2 years of symposia, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of live panel broadcasting. And what it's called the Lazarus Symposium, the Lazarus Initiative. People can go to LazarusInitiative.com will take people to it, and you can subscribe to the symposia there. But what we're doing is conducting an orchestra of pure genius, of pure lucid conscious genius, in order to put a plasma bolt of lightning and a thunderbolt of Thor into the satanic Atlantean thrall. And it's working. It's working because it's syndicating, and millions of people around the world are one way or the other getting the gist of what we're doing. And I'm very excited by that. So I'm blessed that I get this incredible sort of waves of, if not tidal waves of feedback that are constantly coming in. And in some respects, from being one of the most vaunted Rasputin-like characters in the world, I'm very beloved by a great many, and I'm very blessed. I read so many messages every day, literally thousands, and I'm very, very blessed in that, you know. So yeah, I regard myself as having been at the tip of the spear for the last quarter of a century in consolidating the alphabet of the human heart, because that's what it comes down to. And now I understand more about the mechanics of love, the mechanics of empathy, the mechanics of redemption, of salvation, of immortality and ascension. That's the stuff I'm now focused toward, because that's the stuff that I've learned on the back of a 25-year conversation is actually what it's all about. It's all about us catching the ascension wave.
This is what is the most interesting interview or connection or person that you've been involved with?
I'm sorry, can you just repeat that? I just didn't.
Yes. What is the most interesting at this point conversation person that you've been involved with?
Oh no, that's an impossible question. I mean, it's literally.
Do your best.
Oh, I can't, because I've spoken to so many of the great and the good. I mean, I've conversed over the years. Over 25 years, I've had correspondences with dark hearts like Henry Kissinger to more enlightened souls like Nelson Mandela, either the real or the clone, take your pick. I don't really care which. Dalai Lama, questionable character, kind of a dialectic character. Characters, many religious and political leaders, heads of state, kings and queens, paramount chiefs, sultans. Some of the more enigmatic things that I've dealt with has been extraterrestrial in origin, on 2 occasions meeting alien hybrids, one of whom was an ambassador from the Syrian star system. That was de jure and de facto. It happened. It was real. I've had extraordinary engagements, even at a government level, where we've been called in, or Humanitat were called in to help to investigate and to assemble science panels to investigate alien technologies, transdimensional technologies. And I've met with people so clever, so advanced in consciousness and in intellectual acuity, that they make me look like just like a complete pauper. It's quite embarrassing. But one example is Professor Florian Kolchiak, arguably the greatest mathematician in the world. Please, guys, please. And they're just the most beautiful dogs, the 3 of them. They just to look at, they're coming in like.
Oh my gosh!
I mean,
oh my gosh, so cute and
happy.
Thank you for showing that,
guys. No more partying downstairs.
We're trying to do a show here, a series show.
Exactly. I just don't want to be caught kicking a poodle in the head live on air. It wouldn't go down. Professor Florian Kolchiak. I mean, there is a man who is arguably the greatest mathematician alive, and in Romania, who has discovered the universal genome, which is essentially the voice of God through mathematics. So he can now type in a question. We can type a question in to an interface, an algorithm that he's created over the last 4 decades. And that will throw a signal out, a mathematical signal out into the quantum, so to speak. And what will come back will be a perfectly construed answer in universal syntax, which is the voice of God, with the Akashic record, will answer you whatever your question is in perfect universal syntax. Will you tell me how that works? We know, the professor and I know, we both look at each other with tears in our eyes, gaze at one another, and then hug each other, because we know, Bruno Mihailescu and the general, who my partners in Romania are 2 of the characters who know. There's a handful of military intelligence guys and of Vanguard scientists who know that what we've got in hand with the universal genome is the end of evil, is the end of government, is the end of usury, of exploitation, of manipulation, of deception. Once that universal genome is deployed appropriately, I'll give you an example. Yes, we could set it up as a kiosk, a Superman kind of phone kiosk, where you could literally walk into it, be beamed, be read by the quantum field instantly, provided you've got quantum computation, the capacity to process the billions and billions of vectors at the same time. And we can tell if someone is capable of being a policeman or a politician or a judge. Guys, please, we can tell all of this using this universal genome. So the computer screen will come back and go, no, this individual is foundationally corrupt or corruptible, and must not, under any color of judgment, be allowed to become a policeman or a justice or a political figure or a public servant. For instance, it would literally end any capacity for wickedness and evil to prevail. And it goes more than that this universal genome is able to see it. It's not electrographic scanning, it's beyond that, but it's able to scan the plasma of who you are, because the isness, the essence of who you are, is actually a mathematical quanta, meaning to say it's a frequency set. So every human being is an actualized frequency set, an orchestra of frequencies. You have a unique signature as DNA, let's say a DNA resonance signature. That signature is a quanta, is a definable, identifiable quanta, which means to say the Akashic field can look at it and can speak to it and can remedy it. So we can now I'm also working with scientists through my beloved Romanian partners. We are working with scientists who are also developing the capacity to create counterpoint frequencies that come back. Once you put the helmet on, let's say, and the helmet reads and scans you, works out the resonance of your DNA, and every single thing that is wrong with you, mind, body, and soul, is a quanta which could be identified. We can send counterpoint frequencies into you, beam them into you, through your feet, stimulating the mitochondria in your body, through the seat that you're sitting in, through the chamber that you're lying in, through the helmet that you're wearing, through the device that you tether to yourself. We can, and we're working on these technologies. We call them life pod technologies. We're running somewhat late in them. That's because I've been so oversaturated and we're doing so many different things. And the thing that I'm focused more than the hard technologies on right now is the microbial formulas, is the New Earth Pharmacy raft of cures and treatments, which we're fast tracking this year. First one is already out, the New Earth Regenesis formula, which boosts immunity immeasurably and helps to redeem us from the grip of this satanic thrall that's weaponized the biosphere and is causing the auto-destruct of our genome, and constantly looking for the weakest link in our chain, which is why people are dying all around the world. The spike protein is nailing them. So we've got the spike protein neutralizing cure. It's a treatment and a patent pending immune treatment, and it is followed by another, I think, 35 treatments for hepatitis, for Lyme's disease, for Crohn's disease, for everything you can shake a stick at. MRSA, the superbugs, which are drug resistant, multiple drug resistant. Those are the things that are killing people by the tens of millions all around the world. So people going to hospitals, sick, old, and infirm people are not coming out. Why? Because they're going into hospital with a depleted immune system anyway.
Right.
They're moving to the most weaponized and toxic environment you could possibly imagine, with the most, class of idiots running around masquerading as nurses and doctors. In the main, I am not knocking good nurses and doctors, but there are all too few of them. Most of them have just been completely co-opted by the pharma mind virus and believe the bullshit of their given vocation, but know nothing about medicine, know nothing about science, know nothing about healing. And that, unfortunately, is the calamity or the abomination that we've arrived at in the public health administration sector and in our medical science fraternity industry. So that needs to end. The harvest of humanity through industrial death machinery of hospitals and doctors and outpatients and clinics and pharmacopoeia, that has to end. That's the key thing. We die because of poisons, and the things that are touted as medicines are the greatest poisons. And the governments, which is the greatest, the creature that statutorily protects the poisons, is an industry that promotes and manufactures poisons. So that's what your government does. Your government poisons your mind, your heart, and your soul, and steals the land, steals the gold, and manipulates the outcomes. And the outcomes are always Saturnian, always occultic, meaning to say invisible, conducted by invisible masters. All of that needs to end in our lifetime, but it's not going to end if we don't have foundational coherence streaming into the cells in our bodies. I insist that the living cells in this body will be in a state of equilibrium. I insist that my plasma, my life force that beams into this beautiful spaceship body of mine, this immanent, beautiful body, this is my conduit, my umbilical to the divine, to the Godhead. No Catholic Church will impede or intercede or stand in the way of me and my God. There will be no government, no control mind, no mind control, which is what government means. There will not be any third-party intervention, thank you very much, between me and my creator, which is to say, between me and the outcome that I desire, because my will is thy will. My will be done, thy will be done, same quanta. We have to own that piece, each of us. We can only do it if we've cleansed our bodies and our minds. So we need to redeem and reclaim our mRNA right now from this satanic thrall of so-called vaccinations, which is pure surgical intervention. It's installation of technology into the mRNA DNA. It's bringing about catastrophic failure of billions of human beings right now, and all living systems are under threat because of these spike proteins. So releasing those formulas is, to me, the single most pressing work right now that I'm engaged in.
All right. And given that you started doing this in 1997 and considering where you are right now, could you have foreseen this for yourself? Because what you're talking about is it's great. Look what
Yes,
you,
I
yeah.
didn't foresee my own path particularly. I foresaw that the apocalypse, that I saw a cloud of doom ahead, as most of us who've been variously conscious in life, certainly for as long as I've been around. You entrain. I've never touched alcohol in my life. I've never smoked marijuana or chewed a mushroom. I have no experience of any order of magnitude with drugs or with narcotics or with alcohol. I'm Mr. Sober. I've always been.
So how'd you do that going and being in rock music?
By
Were you
doing
the
it.
only one?
By doing it. I was in rock and roll to purge myself of the primal scream. I was not in rock and roll to get laid or to get stoned. And I have nothing wrong with getting laid and getting stoned, and I've certainly been laid more than my fair share. But that was not the point. That was not the point, you know, of my.
I'm just gonna laugh at that. Well, good for you. Okay.
Well, there you go. But that was never my point. It was never my objective. My objective was to
get it out.
Well, to find a decompression valve for this rage that was inside me from having grown up in war and then being a refugee for 9 years, and just being able to see this devilishness in the ethers. So yeah, that I saw that I had no choice but to do a primal scream to get it out of get that rage out of my system, because if that rage was in my system, I wouldn't be serving anyone or anything.
Right.
So I'm glad that the angelic hosts imbued me with song and with music at a time when I could scream and strut and get that out. It was a 9-year cycle, and then literally from one day to the next, I could no longer, pick up a guitar or compose or sing or perform. It's just gone. It descended on me one fine day with an engagement with angels in Cologne in Germany in the late 80s, and by 1999 it left. Same thing. It was like a 9-year cycle, and it was gone. It came one day and it left one day. And I was smart enough to recognize that was a visitation that had happened.
Okay.
And it was a mystery to me, for sure, and probably pissed off my band and producers and management company, because I just walked out of the studio one day and never went back in, and ended up going to sit in the desert in Morocco and then Egypt for 3 years to recalibrate and redefine the holograph, which I did. With the grace of God, I did recalibrate, and by 1999, I'd fully recalibrated sufficiently to go, okay, I'm gonna walk a particular walk. I'm gonna walk right into the fire in my way. I'm gonna go and find the man. And I did. I set about for 5 years, traveling and meeting with every terrorist leader, every political dissident, every political leader, every religious leader, every mad mullah that I could get to, and I got to a great many. And then after 5 years of that citizen diplomacy, so to speak, setting up Humanitat Foundation and setting up the dialogue that I was engendering, I got to a point within 5 years where I recognized, this was about 2004, around about then, when I realized that there was no way I was going to be able to make remedy through a peace foundation. And it was good leaders who took me aside, including heads of state, and said, "Sit down, son. Sacha, listen. You're very sweet and you're very resilient. You've got a lot of stamina and you've got a lot of creative ideas, and you're very well intentioned. But son, you're missing the point, and you're not paying attention to the rules of the game, and what you're doing is not factored into the business model, and you're wasting your life forcefully. You're running out of resources," which was true. And so I had to have a serious rethink. And then that threw me deeply into despair momentarily,
Okay.
where I had to really then go in and dredge the energetic basement in my own life and go, well, then what's it about? I mean, first it's a war, and then it's, then it's the trial of separation throughout my whole life, and then it's heartache, and then the rock and roll thing, and then, breaking from that, and then going on this great quest, and then that, falling into ignominy and into irrelevancy, and you're forced into the basement of your own essence. And what I did at that point was went so deeply into that, I think the despair thing, which is what my journey was really about. It was really investigating sorrow and despair. And I got to a point where I was able to face the worst stories and the worst aspects of reality that exist on the face of the earth and in the basement, which ultimately is ritual sacrifice of babes, of infants, of youngsters, of children. And not just children, to be sure. The whole of our world is an industrial killing machine. It's a war machine and a killing machine. City grids are genocidal kill grids. That's where the industrial harvest of plasma, of life force, of human beings is conducted by the Babylonian priesthood. They're called kill grids. They're called cities, which is why your government has one objective, which is to get you out of the countryside into a kill grid, into a little box where they can poison you and can utilize your life force, your plasma. So that's the language that I increasingly started to see, that how reality was being played, how the Masonic checkerboard, the chessboard of the kingdom of the devil, how it was being conducted.
So
And
how did you see that? Did you see it out in the world, or was it
both,
kind of just like some of it came to you as well?
both. It's an
Okay.
intuitive thing. You start to do readings, you start to have a very psychic disposition, a very psychic capability to read the totems, read the symbols, read the signs. So I've never researched anything, but I've got that intuitive, I've got that gut thing. Yeah. And you're having conversations with powerful people at the same time. So you're learning the metric, you're learning the actual metric from real political animals and kings and presidents who are kind enough to lean in and to tell you the truth about certain things. Obviously, I was lied to as well by religious and political leaders. Everyone wasn't telling me. A lot of these people were high-ranking Luciferians and had Masonic objectives. So it was about cherry picking one's way through that labyrinthine maze of deception. But the fact of the matter is, you have conversations, you learn to intuit, and at the same time, you're situating yourself right on the duende line. You're putting yourself physically and mentally and spiritually on the indivisible line as a living son of God or a daughter of God. You place yourself there, you open your chest cavity, you expose your vulnerability, your heart, your innocence to the ethers, and you lean in, and then you see what you see. And that's how I conducted my learning, was in that very simple metric. And then beginning to set into motion initiatives or organizations that could bring some relief or some remedy, like the International Tribunal for Natural Justice and the various judicial commissions of inquiry that we've led and are involved in currently, like the New Earth Project, and like the Lazarus Initiative, and like the Arise Guerrilla Network. These are all projects that do not excite me personally. They do not reward me personally, and I don't want to sound ungrateful, but these are not things that bring me joy particularly. But I really feel a duty of care in having established these initiatives and organizations, and to put them out there. My idea of joy is to be stark naked in a hammock on a
That was
beach.
going to be my question. Okay, go ahead. Stark naked on a beach in a hammock.
Probably in Fiji, writing poetry and literally communing with the ethers and with the elements. That would give me inordinate amounts of joy and peace. I haven't had that. I'm trying to now thread those elements into my life increasingly by developing the New Earth Sanctuary project in Mexico in the Mayan Riviera, on the banks of the most beautiful laguna you ever saw in your life. So the New Earth Sanctuary, which is a residential project, a land banking platform that I've launched, is moving beautifully, and I'm very excited about that. And I'm there building heaven on earth to the very best of my ability with my compatriots and engineers and a great many goodly, godly folk. Yeah.
Awesome. Hey, when Bali, there's a strife that happened there during all the COVID stuff. What was that? What was that like?
What was the? Did you say strike?
Strife, like in terms of vaccinations, in terms of
Yeah.
was it pretty heavy
well,
there?
It was heavy. It was heavy. The Indonesian government of not the sharpest knife in the drawer, let's just say, and have been doing their bit to play into the Klaus Schwab and George Soros's Fabianist globalist agenda. It's a fairly young country, birthed in 1945, with a manufactured language called Bahasa Indonesia, literally created by Oxbridge linguists in the 1940s. So it's a manufactured country. It's the 16,700 islands which were consolidated to create Indonesia, a nation state with an installed president, Sukarno, back in the day. And the reason the Illuminati, or the invisible masters, orchestrated the engineering of Indonesia out of the Second World War was in order to consolidate the gold of Southeast Asia, because the gold was variously in the 17,600 islands in the cave systems there, with all the different sultans and kings and principalities that made up that archipelago. So, creating a horrible war, traumatizing those blessed islanders in Southeast Asia, and then at the end of it saying, look, we're going to consolidate you into a country. We're going to, give you your own flag and your own national anthem, and you're going to come together. You'll never, ever again experience a war like that. You'll be protected in the future. All the local princes, principalities, kings, chakordas, chiefs agreed and said, well, great, we'll just all lean in together to create a nation state that will protect us, so that we'll never have to be bombed by the Japanese again or invaded by the Dutch again. They did that with the best will in the world, but that was a gold grab being conducted by the Anglo-American Corporation, which they did. And Fort Knox ended up stealing much of the gold, giving Indonesia, the corporation government, federal safekeeping receipts every month, and not honoring them ever in history. I was involved since 2005 in trying to get redemption for the trillions of dollars owed to Indonesia from the stolen gold subsequent to 1945, and with no success whatsoever. So that's redemption that is still coming. And I'm somewhat deeply invested in the lineages of the hereditary leaders in Indonesia, the sultans and the kings of kings, with whom I'm very close and have very beautiful, powerful, connected relationships. I've lived there, as I said, for 18 and a half years, and I have a fairly good grasp and handle on the travesty of how Indonesia was a manufactured nation state, where all of those blessed islanders were indentured into registering their souls and their land and their gold into the hands of Cronus, into the hands of the Vatican conspirators. And it's a desperately serious business, because it's almost a century of genocide, of poisoning, and of manipulation and control that needs to be remedied. It has to be remedied. And the same could be said of the Native Americans in Canada and the United States of America. Those corporation countries need to be brought into dissolution fully. By the grace of God, we're seeing the sock puppet Biden and his febrile flock of tits in the Senate and in Congress in Washington, D.C., that swamp, as Trump rightly calls it. We are seeing that now fall into such a dystopian spiral, with a few emergent voices of reason, God love them, in the Senate and in Congress. God love those few brave men and women who are really calling out pure truth. God, I love them so much. But there's only a handful, as you know, a handful.
Right.
And the rest are rotten to the core. And that's over, Washington, District of Columbia, that great fiction, that principality of darkness is over. The quadrillion-dollar war machine is spent, is on the back foot, and is going now into a spiral of dystopia. The Vatican complex is, and its little college of cardinals twittering around in their little blood red booties, they are almost also in the death spiral. And the Crown of England, in its the abomination of all that it has represented, not just England, the Crown of England, but the crowns of Europe, which were the proxies of the Vatican over the last 500 years. That's all now exposed, and people in Sweden, people in Norway, people in England, people in Spain, they're able to now see the folly of their royal families, and that these proxy class of fringe Illuminati are the extension of the black nobility. The black nobility are the Sabbateans, who are very closely connected to blood ritualism and to alien off-world intelligences that intend to fully take over the fabric of human soul in this generation and return Lucifer to his throne in the Rothschild-sponsored rebuild of the Temple of Solomon in the land called Israel. All of that is part of the cacophony of evil that we, you and I, and our generation need to disentangle and to bring into dissolution. And we will do it because we have the power. The angelic humans have the power to bring all of that contrast and evil into dissolution. And we could do it in a very short span of time. In my view and my reckoning, it'll be done by the year 2030, when we'll all variously be alive to witness the movement toward the vertical ascension event, which assuredly is also happening in our lifetime.
Yes. All right. Hey, last question, Sacha. If to help people ascend and talking about joy and all of that, what would you recommend? Saying that you know what will bring you most joy to sit on the beach, but there's much care in getting a lot of this off the ground. In terms of people finding their joy now, what would you recommend?
So it's a good question. But again, I'm going to hearken back to my own story and to the story of Gautama Buddha, Siddhartha. The Buddha sat under a Bodhi tree, purportedly, many centuries ago, and recognized that all in this veil of tears is suffrage and sufferance and suffering. And that is the one inescapable fact of the matter, is that the trial of separation is a sad business, is a sorrowful business, and that the human experience and human condition is foundationally colored by the trial of separation, which is to say, sadness, sorrow, and grief. And there is a way beyond it, and there is a way out of it. So that then was laid down by the Buddha. Fast forward to where we are today, given all that we've purportedly learned and now can see retrospectively and retroactively. And it seems to me that we are indeed able to bypass the suffrage, provided we step fully into the living now, into the perfect geometry of now. And if we are able to collapse our egoic or false light aspect of being, if we are able to collapse that luciferic, false light, idolatrous aspect of ourselves, which is to say, the ego, which is to say the opposite of the I am. If we're able to allow the ego to move into its natural dissolution and allow the flame of the I am to emerge in its stead, the I am does not see or feel or touch or relate or reflect pain or sorrow or suffrage or grief. It cannot, because it is always in a state of grace. It's in a state of perfect witness, not in a state of judgment. It's not judging the moment and going, oh my God, my dream is falling apart. My heart's broken. My dreams are over. It's not doing that. That's what the ego does. So the false light aspect of Sacha Stone is the imbecile, is the one that believes that I am a victim of circumstance, that my heart is broken and that I am in pain and that my dreams have failed and my life is irrelevant. And we tell ourselves these stories, and the victim in us, the ego, the false light aspect, which is to say the ghoul, which is to say the demon, which is to say the shadow element of the I am, is the one saying, feed me entropy, feed me negativity, feed me, I'm a victim, I need to be identified as a victim, I feel alive as long as someone is telling me I'm the victim. So that aspect in ourselves, and everyone relates to what I'm saying, needs to just shut the FUK up and stop, cease and desist. There is no value in my pain, in my suffrage, in me identifying with pain. Oh, you don't honor me enough. You don't respect me enough. You don't lean into me enough. You don't give me what I need. You don't hold me and make me feel safe. We keep telling other people this bullshit in our relationships. We keep telling ourselves this bullshit. Just stop. Withdraw the grunts and the squawks to the 0 point in the perfect geometry, in the living moment, and sit with it. Just be completely at peace without castigating, without judging, without commentary. Just be here now. Allow all of that to dissipate. It will. And then what you're left with is actualization. Then a state of witness emerges, not a state of judgment, a state of witness. You begin to see that which self exists behind the veil, behind the grief, behind the sorrow. Everything is perfect always in all ways, even in this realm of duality. Because when one identifies with the I am, with the Godhead, then one sees the cosmic joke and recognizes that all of that dialectic, all of that play, all of that psycho-emotional, psychosexual drama was just a means by which we were playing in the mud to try to identify ourselves as angelic beings in a realm of darkness and contrast. Once you've identified yourself as an angelic being, it becomes that much more simple to simply keep defaulting, keep going back to that state of grace, that state of witness. Don't judge. Thou shalt not judge is the single most important tenet of the gospel, and people would be well advised to pay very good attention to it.
Hell yeah. I probably shouldn't say hell yeah to the end of that, but I am. To simplify what you just said, Sacha, everybody just lighten up. Yet it's really hard to lighten up through all of this, but just do it. Again, just like we're in the mud. So just somehow relax in it, be okay with it. And just like you said, accept yourself, accept it all, which is really challenging to do, but that's what we're going to do. I'm going to end after I get off the air with you with the Just Be practice. So I always close my podcast with these. I think I'm going to take people on the beach in a hammock, and we're going to do some I am work. So y'all stay tuned. Sacha, thank you so much for sharing your being with us. So
My
appreciated.
great pleasure. Send me the link and I'll get it out to my audience. Thank you.
Awesome. And if I can have a moment to thank you when I'm going to stop the recording right now. Wow. All right, y'all.
Just Be
Sacha
practice.
Gave us a pow punch, which is really great. So before we go into the Just Be practice, I want to throw out a little thing, little conversation about Target, knowing there's a lot of hubbub going right now and knowing that this will be published in another week. So not knowing where things will be at this time, but I would encourage you in terms of going down the rabbit hole to start researching ESG, which is environmental, social, and governance. And you will realize that a lot of our corporations are being given a lot of money to support certain agendas. Now, with Target right now, there's a whole bunch of a backlash against some of the pride wear that they have right now. And again, this isn't about, it's all about division to me and versus love. So transgender, sexuality, feminism, all that, black and white, all this battling. Okay, and you can't make this stuff up. So Target approached one of the designers for some of this wear was, I'm probably going to be pronouncing this wrong, a company out of the UK called Ab Pralin. And the creator of Ab Pralin is Eric. And here's a picture of him after he announced on social media the exciting merger with Target. And yes, he's wearing a shirt, Satan respects pronouns here. I'm going to show it on my phone for those of you who are watching. Okay, again, if you worship Satan, if that's your thing that you're connected to, so be it. Yet when a large corporation hires you, something about that is a little amiss. Especially, let me show another piece of merchandise that they have. And it's basically, it says, if I cannot inspire love, I will cause fear. And then this one, which is a guillotine, and it basically says homophobe headrest. So there's a lot more to this than meets the eye again. And I also feel that this is about sex. So if certain pieces of the Pride clothing were in an adult store, totally fine, but yet you've got kids walking in, kids that are highly influenced, that they should also be able to have a choice and not have all this rammed down their throat, or this is how it's supposed to be, or not allowing families to have a choice with how they want to raise their kids, or okay. And a group of friends of mine that went to Target the other day and just, did some cool stuff. So I would encourage you to do the same. So even just going into Target and taking some of the clothing and just putting in baskets and putting it in different parts of the store, or going up to the manager and just saying, hey, I've just heard some of these things and it's really disconcerting to me. So for me, I will not shop at Target anymore. Okay, I hope that all makes sense. All right, let's go into a practice right now. So based on Sacha talking about where he was going to find, or where his most joy is on a beach in a hammock. So let's go there. So take a second and get connected here, hearing the waves, hearing the birds. Peaceful, quiet, no one around. Okay, and I see you sitting. We're going to get out of the hammock right now. We're going to sit right on the land, right on the beach. And connecting to the soil and to the sand. And I see it having a little bit of wetness there and texture, obviously. So using the words that Sacha gave us about you being an angelic being and working on being in the I am. That in this moment, there's nothing to forgive yourself for. There's nothing to think about. There's nothing to be but here, and to tap into the goodness that is intrinsically inside of you. It just is. Even if you can't feel it, it is there. So again, if you need help, I see it and I feel it within you. So if you're struggling to find it yourself, I got you. And in this aloneness and solitude, you are not alone. If you're feeling that angelicness inside of you, you are connected to all that is. Okay, and right now there's a great deal of evil, goodness, all of it. And just to accept and bring harmony to all of it, you can do that. If you are this angelic being, which you are, it's not about rising above it. It's about being it and being okay with it, and then letting the light shine through. But you are the light. Each of us is light. And as we combine our light together, it just gets greater and greater. So even in the solitude, we are all together as one. We have created this world, and together we can create a better one, a more heart-centered one, even in this moment. As I smile, it is. And we are creating it right now, right within this period of time together. And you can stay here or you can exit out. Winky, winky. Man, you angelic being. That was awesome. Until next week, just to give you a quick little heads up. So I'm taking this Galactic Akashic Records class with beautiful Debbie, internationally known Debbie Solaris. So we'll have a couple people who are taking the class with me, and then end with her being on the show, which I am so grateful for. All right, you all. See you later. Bye. So cool of you to be here. I went from being off most social media to being on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Truth Social, and you might be watching this on YouTube, Rumble, or BitChute. Or you might be listening to this on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. I'm on over 19 directories at this point. So connect, comment, subscribe, like. Oh, and my intention is to have a new episode out Wednesday of each week. Oh, Lordy, more to come.